What did you see on TV that traumatized you when you were a child? I remember being 4 when this happened and I saw it on the news or heard about it. I heard that babies and kids got hurt and I instantly freaked the F out and cried to the point I was inconsolable. I had a baby brother who just turned 1 and I thought he was one of those babies who was hurt. I was 4 and had no concept of places and distance. It was so bad that they had to call my mom from work to pick me up or calm me down. There was this anti-drug PSA where they were like, when you sniff, this is what happens to your brain, and it was this girl sleeping in bed while her room slowly filled with water and she drowned. But I was very young, and didn't know they meant like, sniffing glue or whatever. I just thought they meant like, sniffing when you have a cold. So I was petrified for ages that sniffing was going to drown me. And I had terrible seasonal allergies for like 10 months of the year. So I had runny noses a lot. I get that they didn't want to be like, here are the things people sniff to get high, don't sniff those. But that commercial was way too vague about what sniffing is. That one scene in Labyrinth where the puppets are pulling off their heads and tossing them around and they turn to Sarah and just say, hey, let's take your head off. Then start chasing her and grabbing at her neck and singing about it like it's no big deal that they are trying to kill her. 6-year-old me took a hard pass on that one. Big nope. The finale of Blackadder goes forth, wherein having tried to get out of the war all season to no avail, our cast of WWI soldiers go over the top of their trench and all fucking die. The executives originally wanted Blackadder to survive by playing dead, but they filmed the all dead ending when no one was looking. It's done in slow motion and without sound because the studio they had for the charge was too small for anyone to run more than a few meters. The scene fades to a field of poppies, a symbol of remembrance in the UK and beyond. To cover this is kind of a silly one. Matilda came out right as I was starting school. Miss Trunchbull scared the shit out of me. I was so scared to go to school because I thought I'd be put in the chokey, which, let's be serious, is essentially an Iron Maiden. I pretended to be sick so much those first few months of school, and then my mom told me I had to tell her what was wrong or I would have to do kindergarten over again. I told her I was scared of the principal because of Miss Trunchbull and I didn't want to go back. She talked to my teacher who talked to my principal who ended up walking me through the school and showing me lots of fun stuff. Then he showed me his office, which was chokey-free. Then he gave me a popsicle and walked me to my classroom. I wasn't scared again. That man was principal throughout my whole grade school life and he retired after I went to college. He was beloved in the community, and sadly he passed away in 2019. I'll always remember him. Kind of unrelated, but before my younger sister started kindergarten, I was telling her about all of the stuff she'd do in class, and for whatever reason, the idea of doing the national anthem terrified her. No matter how many times I explained it to her, she had the idea in her mind that each student would have to memorize it and that every day at the beginning of class, they would have to go up on their own in front of the class and recite it. If they got it wrong, they'd get in trouble and have to start over until they got it right. No clue why she thought that. The TV show Little House on the Prairie. There are constant jokes about how it was inappropriately billed as a good family show for a reason. It was a festival of horrors, and left me traumatized more often than not. Key episodes included a girl, Sylvia, who was raped by someone wearing a creepy clown mask, ended up pregnant, shamed, and died falling off a ladder trying to protect herself from another rape. Albert ending up addicted to drugs, with horrific withdrawal scenes. Bizarre nightmares, including Laura and Albert as Indians with Albert in some crucifixion position, Mr. Allison beheading Mrs. Allison, Laura dreaming her own execution, religious whack jobs kidnapping kids or keeping their own kids prisoner and beating them, rat-infested grain causing sickness through the whole town, Ma getting an infected wound on her leg and hallucinating, to the point that it looks like she's cut her leg off, Laura's horse breaking a leg and having to be shot, a massive wagon accident where the kids watch, screaming in horror, as their parents tumble down the side of a massive hill and die. The blind school catching on fire, and Mrs. Garvey and Mary's baby being trapped inside, including a scene where it looks like Mrs. Garvey is actually smashing a window with the baby to try to escape. Cut to smoking bodies after rabid animals attacking, from wild dogs to a pet raccoon, all involving gruesome scenes of stabbing and killing said animals. So many hostage situations, kidnappings, drunken rages, beatings and other forms of abuse, cruelty. Even the episodes that were supposedly uplifting freaked me out, like the woman who faked her own death and funeral so her grown kids would visit her, or where someone goes blind, regains sight or learns to walk again via trauma, and, oh, especially, everyone blowing up the whole town on the final episode, ETA. Here's the Sylvia plus clown mask rapist episode. Enjoy your nightmares. https://www.dailymotion.com/video/x7sask9. I think this is the source of most of my issues I have. I'm not even positive. I apparently used it to watch the movie all the time when I was really little. Once my memories kicked in at around 2 1/2, I couldn't stand watching any part of it anymore and I didn't know why. I also always have this intense anxiety and sadness about throwing anything away. Even simple stuff like used tissues messed me up for life. This comment sent me into a small deep dive on the Pingu Wiki, and apparently it's one of numerous Pingu episodes that have been removed from the television rotation, banned, or censored in some way due to a variety of reasons: implied self-harm, toilet humor, Native American stereotypes, blood, etc. I don't remember Pingu being that problematic lol, but I do remember the terrifying walrus. The episode of the 80s version, where she has a dream that she gives birth to a human visitor hybrid that looked like a fucking gremlin, scared the shit out of me, and couldn't sleep until my older brother tried to explain they made a prop baby by using my ET doll and a red Lego brick as its tongue, showing me there's nothing to be afraid of. Probably the nicest thing he ever did for me. Chimpanzees are brutal. I read this book called Our Inner Ape by Franz de Waal, a primatologist. He compares human behavior to that of chimpanzees and bonobos. Bonobos like to solve disputes with pleasant sexual behavior, and are considered peaceful. Chimps are extremely hierarchical and warlike. Humans are essentially both ... and then some. A very good book, and perfect for anyone with a background in biology or zoology. I'm not a scientist, so it took me a while to get through it, but it's very well written and I recommend it. Yup, chimps peeled the skin off the back of another chimp whilst he was alive. The screams were the worst part of it. I know it was there to show the utter brutality of nature at its worst, but I think they could have warned people beforehand, which is what they do now if there is anything remotely bad in the programs. The true horror was that it wasn't at night. It wasn't a one-off event. When they opened the photo album, it keeps going long after the initial scare. Tim Curry did an amazing job in that movie. As a kid, it left me with the feeling of helplessness against evil, and that it could happen anytime. As an adult, I listened to the audiobook. While nearing the end, I walked to the local shop. No one around. The wind was blowing and the sky was red. As I walk around the corner of the shop, a balloon floats across the ground in front of me. I ran into that ship so quick. Was just a marketing balloon for a local cafe, but scared the shit out of me. Loved the most recent film, especially the projector scene, but didn't play on the Anytime, Anywhere horror of the first. The Gulf War was pretty scary, especially the Scud attacks on civilians. The run-up to the war was pretty nerve-wracking, with talking heads earnestly explaining how big of an army Iraq had and how badly America was outnumbered by, and how we were basically getting into another Vietnam. There was an HBO movie about a crisis in the Middle East which led to nuclear war, and the fear of getting blown up by people miles away who don't even know me has never really left me. I remember the Cold War. The radio said something and Mom didn't believe it. She turned on the TV because she wanted to watch it, which was very rare, especially during the daytime. She said if it was right then the news would be on. This was also sorta odd for that time of day. The news was on, like she had thought. The man on the TV said a bunch of things that I had absolutely no way of understanding. My mother said that this meant that it must be true, but that she still couldn't believe it. My father came home a bit later, at his usual time. First words out of his mouth were, "Did you hear?" Then my parents got drunk. Turns out that was the day the USSR had collapsed, and on itself in epic fashion, the threat of being instantly vaporized had decreased by about 100%. There is a film, it is called Mummy, or, I dunno, localization gives it in Russian that is translated like mummy. Okay, it is not the creepiest film I've ever seen, but the one freaking scene of a bug, I forgot what is its name. It is a Egypt bug that gets into the fat guy. Gosh, it is really scary. I was a 7-year child. Do not watch. The collapse of the tower was the real holy shit moment. I remember sitting in a class in 10th grade. We had been pulled out of our regular room and brought into a different class to watch the TV as it unfolded. We were confused about what was going on, and the severity and intentionality of what we were witnessing. But when there was smoke billowing from the top of a building, that was one thing. When it came crashing to the ground, vertically, and it was just gone. That was when it was too real. Unexplainable shock and sadness in that moment. Senior year of high school, I was in my war history seminar class. Oddly enough, first plane hit. Another student came in and said a plane flew into the World Trade Center. Every single one of us assumed Cessna or something and pretty much thought, oh, that really sucks. Anyway, class ended, and while walking to our next class, we caught a glimpse of a TV and what had actually happened. As we were watching, the second plane hit. The rest of the day is a total blur. Had a classmate whose 2 uncles worked in the tower. He was trying like crazy to get a hold of them. He only heard back from one. Had a teacher who wanted to act like nothing happened and tried to teach a normal class. My dad worked for a 3-letter agency and had to immediately go up there. He called me at school to tell me that he had to go and I wouldn't see or talk to him for a month at least. In the month that followed, I spoke to him twice for a total of maybe 30 seconds. We just watched TV for the rest of the day in total shock. What I remember the most is the following day. I was in the 7th grade and we were having a class discussion about everything that happened. One of the kids who was Middle Eastern said, as he was crying, "I just know that my family, myself, and people who look like me will have a hard time after this because people will blame all of us." I didn't understand what he was talking about at the time. I think about how he was right. Some people called him terrorist and other names following the event. So fucking sad. I remember being in the school library, trying to finish my algebra homework for that bitch Mrs. O'Rourke's class, when the school principal came on the intercom announcing that 2 planes had flown into the World Trade Center. I looked out the window for smoke, because I initially thought he was referring to the Seaport World Trade Center in Boston, and that it had maybe been some Cessnas or something. It wasn't until my English class that I saw what had really happened. Those planes were much bigger than I'd expected. That scene where Atreyu sees the mural of Mork snarling in the cave, and then turns around to see him right there in the never-ending story. Holy shit. That terrified me. Anytime something started playing on the Disney Channel that I even thought might be that movie, I'd turn it off. I remember being at a hotel in Orlando when we went to Disney World when I was 6. I spent one night at some kids club that entertained kids while parents went out. They started playing this movie on a projector screen and I faked being sick to get them to find my parents to pick me up. Also the Unsolved Mysteries episode about the Stockton arsonist that I caught on TV one night. That video of the house burning and the guy rasping Omar was nightmare-inducing. I was in college when this happened, watching the game with my buds. Pretty much every other dorm room had something going on for the game too. When the malfunction happened, at least one person from every single room, boys and girls alike, ran into the hall yelling something to the effect of "Did you just see that too?" Screaming and yelling ensued. One solitary boob was all it took to throw a dorm hall into chaos. Which yeah, I guess that makes sense. Oh Lord, Back when I was younger, Nickelodeon had a sub-channel called Nicktoons, honestly better than Nickelodeon, as it played the classics, and even some of the up-to-date stuff. At one point, they had this event where they compiled animations from around the world, which was very cool to watch. One animation in particular came from, I wanna say, China. It was about two child panda bears playing around, walking, swinging and stuff. Whatever, I was into it. I really love animals. Well, at the end of the animation, they had the two pandas choke on lollipops and die, then proceed to play in their heaven. When I tell you how hard I cried at that, I wouldn't be exaggerating. To this day I haven't been on Nicktoons. Edit. Wow, I'm glad I'm not the only one weirded out by it. I just rewatched it to make sure that fight or flight response stayed active. Shudders. I used to be afraid of amputation. To be exact, it was the idea of permanency that scared me. Having one thing alter your life forever just like that. You get stabbed. If you don't die you'll recover, at least in movies. You lose a foot, well, you're footless for the rest of your life. My little mind couldn't digest that. So yeah, when I was 8 I watched that Simpson episode where Homer gets his thumb accidentally chopped off by Marge while she's casually cutting brownies, and it freaked me the fuck out. I couldn't watch The Simpsons for 2 years. I would run away while covering my ears whenever it aired. That one Indiana Jones movie where they tie up this guy and this sort of priest comes and sticks his hand in the guy's chest and pulls out his heart. Also, for many years I got Indiana Jones and Star Wars mixed up. B.C. Harrison Ford. So up until my late teens I thought Indiana Jones got his heart removed, then was lowered in lava, which made him a statue which was then gifted to Jabba. Similar to another post, but seeing people jump to their deaths out of the World Trade Centers. My parents had me and my little sister go to our neighbor's house after school that day as an extra safety precaution. Typically we were home alone for an hour before they got back from work. He had the news on and didn't bother to keep us from watching any of it. I was 9 and my sister was 7. They were pissed. The music video for Robbie Williams' Rock DJ. I knew what was about to happen. I covered my eyes with whatever I could, which was one of those parachute men that I got like the day before. I then had pancakes and didn't tell my parents what I saw because I thought I was gonna get in trouble. Also the Thriller music video. Not on TV per se, but on a projection screen at the local skating rink. This was the 80s. I was 8 or 9 at the time. Some stoner in the DJ booth thought it would be a good idea to play Pink Floyd's The Wall with dozens of small children skating around and having a time for themselves. Well, the visual of dead-faced children on a conveyor belt being fed into a meat grinder, and then switching to the ground meat oozing out of the hopper, caused me several months' worth of nightmares. In the 90s, British Rail were doling out some of the most vividly disturbing rail safety videos. There is one video which I cannot remember the name of, where a boy trips on the rail line, and is subsequently smashed to pieces, off camera, by a train. After that scene we were shown actual post-impact images of victims, one of which was of a burnt child, another of a mangled woman. Scarred me for life. There was an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark, or maybe a spin-off, where a nerdy kid had to use the bathroom really bad. Teacher and classmates are like, this guy again. Sheesh. Eventually, he's allowed to go into the bathroom. Gets in a stall, hears a noise from the vent about him. Scared, he continues. Then he hears the noise again, and sees something with eyes in the vents above the stall. He pulls up and runs out. Runs back into the room with his pants peed on. Class and teacher laugh at him like a bad dream. He convinces the teacher to look, and when the teacher does, she is eaten by the toilet monster. The last scene is her shoe falling into a bloody toilet. For about 15 years after that, I had a habit of looking up before using a public toilet. If it had a vent above it, I 100% avoided it. I grew up in the USSR with very little access to Western media. The only movies that weren't Soviet-made that I saw were the 1980s King Kong, Short Circuit, and a badly dubbed version of Empire Strikes Back. which was the best thing that I've ever seen at that point. In the late 80s, some people were able to get their hands on VCRs. My parents' friend had one and a bunch of bootleg VHS movies. One day we came over to his house. My parents and him went to the kitchen to hang out, and I was told to pick a movie and enjoy myself. I think I was 8. I picked Aliens because the box looked cool. I had no idea what it was about. I had barely any exposure to Western cinema, and I wasn't even a little bit desensitized to visual effects. I sat there for 2 hours straight, not taking my eyes off the screen. I didn't blink, and I may have set a world record for holding my breath. I was completely absorbed in the movie. To say that I was terrified would be a massive understatement. When the movie ended, it was time to go home. I didn't say a word to my parents. When I got home, I was already running a fever. I was sick for a full week, and I think I was full-on traumatized for a good decade. We came to the US shortly after, and I'm not exaggerating when I say I couldn't watch anything scary till my late teens. With more than 30 years between that day and now, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. I let my 10-year-old watch it recently after telling him the story, but he completely shrugged it off, and just thought it was really cool. Fucker.